What's going on, everybody? My name is Dustin, and this is Saw is War, and it is a great week to talk about wrestling online because this week has been insane. I cannot remember a more active week where there was no pay-per-view or anything going on. It feels like every show has had these crazy developments that have had people talking, specifically on the WWE side. We will get to everything with WWE and the Wyatt Six and so much more that has happened this week. But first, just want to say if you are new here, new to the channel, or listening on your favorite podcast app, anything like that, please subscribe, like, all that stuff. It helps. It's appreciated very much. So please, if you feel so inclined. Also, there's an email address that will be in the description and show notes and everything. If you have any wrestling takes, anything that you really want to get off your chest as far as wrestling goes, any company, anything like that, please fire away. Send in anything to that email, comment on YouTube, anything like that. Please get those takes fired off. They need someplace to go. So it's funny, I sit all week and I work on a document, like an outline that I'm going to use that'll have all the notes and everything I want to talk about for a given week, just to make sure I don't forget stuff, or can kind of like organize my thoughts in the moment as I'm watching everything and kind of processing it all. And I really did not know what the main point was going to be this week. I believe this week we will talk about the Wyatt Six as the main point. I think that's probably the biggest story. But there is a lot of other things that have happened that are pretty big developments on the WWE side specifically. So we'll start with Monday Night Raw, work our way through the week, try to hit on everything that happened because it was a very busy week. And if I miss anything, let me know. So Monday Night Raw started with a huge surprise. Seth Rollins is back. He made his entrance. Someone on TikTok, I posted a short clip of it. Someone on TikTok said that he looked like Armando Estrada in his white suit, and unbelievable. I cannot unsee it now. And he came out and cut this promo about wanting to be, back on top, wanting to reclaim his show, and it was great. It was great to see him again. It was a huge surprise. I don't think anyone had even speculated that he might be there. But somehow there's always a fan with a sign that says, like, oh man, I hope Seth Rollins is here. Like, it's always like the most specific sign for returns like that. I don't know how they do it, but that's okay. It could be a plant. You never know. You never know. Maybe it's just the biggest Seth Rollins fan in the city. I don't know. But Seth Rollins returns, cuts a promo on how he wants to be back on top, and Damian Priest comes out and says, I wish I'd cashed in on you to prove that, he really is, turning babyface at some point here. He's not, such a bad guy. And they agree to just have a match at Money in the Bank. He's like, I'm free Money in the Bank. Why don't we do this? And just like that, the entire title picture for Raw gets that much murkier, because everything coming out of Clash at the Castle, I really thought was like, okay, Damian Priest has had his moments. He's about to get fed to Gunther here at SummerSlam, and the Gunther world title reign is upon us. But now, Seth Rollins does complicate things, because Triple H loves him some Seth Rollins as a workhorse champion, and there's like the kind of like, you go back and forth and start to say, okay, is Seth Rollins, he's obviously the bigger star. Is it better for him to beat Priest at Money in the Bank, take the title, and then, Gunther beats Seth Rollins, who's more established, a bigger star? Not that Gunther needs more establishing, but it instantly becomes a much, much tougher decision, knowing that you have not only the Money in the Bank briefcase to book around and to try to figure out what you're going to do with that, but now you have Seth Rollins back, who is, for all intents and purposes, like one of the best, most dependable working champions and working wrestlers that the company has. So I'm really curious to see I'm really curious to see where they're going to take all this. And that's something that I thought was like set in stone. Like when the week started, before Monday Night Raw started, I was like, okay, kind of figured that was going to be the SummerSlam, like one of the main events, like one of the Raw main events. So we'll see what goes on with that, but above all else, it's just very good to see Seth Rollins again. I did not realize how much I had missed seeing him every week, and how long it had already been from WrestleMania till now. But very good to have him back on TV. The Alpha Academy story, which I think is probably the best story on Monday Night Raw right now, especially if you know, are out on this Judgment Day, Liv Morgan, Dom Mysterio whole thing going on. The Alpha Academy story of Chad Gable alienating and pushing all of them away kind of seems like it came to a head to some degree this week, where they all finally walked out. Otis had his big moment where he just shoved Chad Gable down, and that was that. They all left, and then in the back they all left him again, and it felt kind of anticlimactic. Like it's been building to be this huge moment where he finally stands up. Otis finally stands up to him for everybody in Alpha Academy, and you know, I thought it was going to build towards a match. I foolishly thought Chad Gable would win the IC title, and it would build towards a match for the two of them for the IC title, but maybe that's still the end game at some point. But I just, you know, I wanted a little bit more after how good and how hot this story has been for months now. It's just, it was disappointing that this was like treated like a big blow off, like, oh, well, that's the end of Alpha Academy, when it's just like he shoved him down and like walked away. Like, I don't know. I wanted a little bit more, and maybe, you know, that comes next week with, you know, I keep saying the Creed brothers, Ivy Nile joining Chad Gable, big old heel faction here. But the developments later in Raw with the Wyatt Six and Chad Gable kind of muddies that even more. But I will get to that. And then the last big thing I think that happened on Monday Night Raw, without getting into the Wyatt Six, is Drew McIntyre, fresh off of being screwed out of winning the world title at Clash at the Castle in his home country, came out and tried to cut a promo, and the fans were chanting CM Punk, and he kind of just said, all right, I quit. He dropped the mic and walked out. And it just, like, it was really effective, despite the fact that we all saw The Rock post on Instagram like 2 months ago that he like personally delivered a sword to Drew McIntyre to like highlight and honor him and congratulate him on signing a massive extension with WWE. So obviously this is all just for angle purposes, but still very well done. And Drew McIntyre and CM Punk continues to be the best feud, I think, in the company right now. Those guys are going to absolutely tear the house down when they can finally wrestle. And I wrote down on my note sheet here, Drew McIntyre quits, and then under that I wrote, he's going to show up somewhere and just beat the hell out of CM Punk. And I mean, it's obvious, but still, did not know how right I was and how fast I would know how right I was. But we will get to SmackDown in a minute. Because next up, we have NXT on Tuesday, which featured the 25-man Battle Royal to determine Trick Williams' #1 contender. And they had been teasing some collaboration with TNA superstars past the Jordynne Grace appearance versus Roxanne Perez. And finally, it started to pay off, because we had Frankie Kazarian kick off the Battle Royal as the first contestant, and then also Joe Hendry. You say his name, and he appears. Joe Hendry. The room was shaking. All of the cameras were shaking. The crowd was singing his music like crazy. And, you know, his appearance is apparently now the most watched social media post or clip of or highlight of WWE's entire year. Nothing has been bigger. Apparently, backstage, everyone's happy with his appearance and wants to, you know, do more and more with him. It's clear that the man is a star, because even in just his limited appearances, he has just unbelievable charisma. And it really is interesting, because it points out kind of like a flaw that a lot of the wrestlers on NXT have, and that's not their fault. You know, a lot of these wrestlers are younger and kind of growing into their characters and developing as performers. But when you have guys like Ilya Dragunov, Carmelo Hayes, and Braun Breaker all go up to the main roster, not to mention then you lose, you know, some of the women superstars, like you lose Kiana James, you lose Lyra Valkyria, like there's a clear lack of charisma there. And you bring in guys like Ethan Page, and you have Joe Hendry do these one-off appearances, and they stand out pretty quickly because they're pretty charismatic guys. And so it's not a surprise to me that Joe Hendry would immediately like stand out and become a huge breakout for NXT in these appearances. So they're definitely going to be smart to keep using him. I don't know what capacity that'll be in, but I think it's clear that he is built for that type of audience, and it's only going to help his profile and TNA's grow as a result too. The battle royal was really good. The WWE has these multi-man matches down to a science at this point, but the talent and the athleticism in NXT really makes it pop, and it has a, like, not a recklessness is the wrong word, but it has this feeling to it that the other shows can't quite do. Like, there's a professionalism to, like, the Raw and SmackDown battle royals that the NXT one, it's just more rough around the edges, I guess. But after all of that, Javon Evans wins and will be the number one contender to take on Trick Williams in an unbelievable I can't believe they're booking this already, to be honest. Putting Trick in the spot of, like, okay, now he has to be the veteran while he's still clearly learning and developing himself as a performer. And it's clear they trust Javon Evans a whole lot, because in his appearances, he has just basically continued to get better and better and deliver more and more every single time. They even had him do 2 matches this last week because Ethan Page was never eliminated technically. So they had him pull double duty. They had him wrestle Ethan Page in the main event of the night. It's a little, I thought it was an odd decision because it puts them in this weird spot. So Ethan Page beats him one-on-one in the main event of NXT this week, and now kind of puts himself into that number one contender spot. But they had the story right there with Trick and Javon Evans and, like, the mentor-mentee, and, like, how are they going to do this without incorporating Ethan Page and a triple threat match or anything like that into it. So feels like they, like, made it more complicated for the sake of making it more complicated. Like, they're like, we have Ethan Page here, and he's still, you know, new, and we're still trying to get him over as this big threat and this bad heel on NXT. So it kind of felt like they, like, overthought it just a little bit too much. They got a little bit too clever with it, but I appreciate it because I think, you know, it's going to lead to some tremendous matches and to some great segments. But I would have been just fine with Javon Evans, Trick Williams one-on-one feud. And then on SmackDown, Friday Night SmackDown had the unenviable task of following up the insane Wyatt Sick6 debut. And they did it. They did it with an incredible show, like, front to back, start to finish, one of the strongest SmackDowns I can remember in a very long time. And I think one of the smartest things they did was they did not bring the Wyatt Sick6 in to SmackDown, and they let that be its thing on Raw. They had little hints and things like they've been putting subliminally in the backgrounds of these shows, but for the most part, there were the recaps of what happened, but that was it. SmackDown was focused on its own stories that they have going on, and they have developed everything perfectly. So, some great matches on SmackDown, which we will get to in a second. But the thing that I think would be the biggest story of the week, if it wasn't for the Wyatt Sick6, is this CM Punk Drew McIntyre feud. Because these guys have been playing this to perfection. And the CM Punk reveal at Clash at the Castle, I said last week, was one of the coolest reveals for something that, you know, it was kind of predictable to be made so, like, eye-catching and so, like, exciting and well done. Like, these guys have played it to perfection, and this was no exception. So Friday started, SmackDown in Chicago started with CM Punk returning to SmackDown. There was a great segment with him and the Bloodline and Paul Heyman. The Paul Heyman CM Punk reunion, beautiful. You love to see it. And then he has to stare down with the Bloodline. Cody Rhodes comes and backs him up, and they have bats. And it was a cool, nice start to the show, because it's always nice to have CM Punk in Chicago. Like, that is like a wrestling cheat code for your show. If you want to have a good segment, a good 20, 25 minutes, just, give him a microphone, but especially if you're in Chicago. But that was not the end of it. We got this unbelievable reveal where there was a segment backstage happening, and like a garage door starts to open, and it comes all the way open, and Drew McIntyre is standing there over the bloody body of CM Punk, and he's got blood all over his hands, and Punk is all busted up, and Drew McIntyre picks him up and carries him through the arena in this beautiful one shot that just follows him through the arena out onto the stage, where he drops CM Punk's body down, takes one of the bracelets off his wrists, and leaves. And Nick Aldis popped out and like yelled and screamed like an angry general manager should, because he is wonderful in that authority role. He's one of the best on-screen general managers and authority figures I think WWE has ever had already. Just in those little details and those little things that he does that just adds so much to any segment. So the shot of Drew McIntyre standing over his body when that garage door opened was one of the most cool, like visually striking shots. In ring, we had some great matches with Carmelo Hayes, Andrade, and Chelsea Green all qualifying for the Money in the Bank matches, which I think is kind of surprising. I don't think any of those guys were favored to win their matches, but Carmelo and Andrade are great choices for a ladder match. I think people forget how good Andrade is and how smooth he is as a wrestler, and I don't think Carmelo has had the time and the chances to really prove how good he is. I know he had that match the first night with Cody Rhodes, but since then he's kind of lost a bit. So this was really surprising to see him get the win over Tama Tonga and Randy Orton. Like, it's nice to see him get that type of credible win. And to put him in a ladder match like that, where, you know, obviously all eyes are going to be on it because it's one of the premier matches and pay-per-views of the year, but to give him the chance to, you know, get really creative and innovative and show off his athleticism in a ladder match is, I think, going to be a huge boost for him. And he's someone that I'm a very big fan of, so I do say that with bias. And then in the main event, we got a match that I think everyone kind of had penciled in for SummerSlam almost. It was Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa one-on-one. Who knows? They might still go to that. They might, you know, they kind of teased a little bit at like Randy Orton eyeing his title. So I don't know what the SummerSlam Cody Rhodes plan is going to be yet, but Solo Sikoa and Cody Rhodes had a great match, but not even in ring. That doesn't matter. What matters is the end of the match, where Jacob Fatu has debuted finally and joined the Bloodline. And not only did he join this new bloodline, but he did it in absolutely dominating fashion that was, in my opinion, perfectly booked. It was unbelievable how they did it, with him basically decimating Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens to end the show. Like a one-man wrecking crew. And there were all these reports beforehand that he was, you know, going to outshine Solo Sikoa because he's just so charismatic and so interesting and compelling. And, I mean, who knows? That might be the case at some point, because he absolutely made the most of his moment, and he looked like a complete star out there, and the crowd was going crazy, and the announcers were putting him over perfect. It was a perfectly executed debut, and I feel like it could have gotten, you know, a little bit out of control with so many new members coming to the Bloodline and similar debuts for them all with these run-ins and these attacks, but I really thought that for Jacob Fatu, they did this in a way that made him look like a complete destroyer and a complete world beater. And I appreciate that I appreciate the thought that clearly went into all of this, to not just have him come out for the sake of having him come out. It was clear that there was a plan to it. And even better than all of that is the fact that he came out and was addressed as Jacob Fatu, because this week there were a couple trademarks that WWE filed for Caesar Sikoa, and people were like, there's no way that's going to be Jacob Fatu's name, right? Like, there's no way. But also, like, WWE does not have the best history with coming up with stage names for performers, so I cannot lie, it was a bit of a relief that he is Jacob Fatu. And Caesar Sikoa is probably where they're going with, you know, a nickname for Solo Sikoa, if I had to guess, if he's not going to call himself Tribal Chief, or if he's going to start calling himself Caesar, like some Hail Caesar thing. I don't understand it, but I prefer it to, you know, having to call Jacob Fatu Caesar Sikoa, so I will take that any day of the week. But overall, SmackDown was just a great show, and really just a consistent 2 hours of TV with the storylines that were propelled were very good. The in-ring performances were great, almost across the board. So before we get to the main topic of the day, run through AEW as well. Over on Dynamite, it was a bit of a weird week for them. They're still building towards Forbidden Door, which will be next weekend, which is shaping up to be an unbelievable show. They continue to book new matches on the card. And we had a pay-per-view quality match that kicked off AEW Dynamite this week, which was Roosh versus MJF and his in-ring return in a commercial-free match that, like, took up the first, 25 minutes or so of the show and was absolutely incredible. Those dudes were beating the hell out of each other. And I'll get to the match a little bit later in the, matches of the week in case you missed it. But it was reported that the reason that they had this match and that they did this no commercial first part of the show was because that Roosh is not allowed on the same card for Forbidden Door as some of the CMLL wrestlers, due to a couple things that are, not the best. Google Roosh CMLL if you want to read about that a little bit more and learn a little bit more about it, but not good all around. I can understand why they're a little apprehensive to that. So the thought was that this was the pay-per-view match now, basically, and we'll do it without commercials, and he will get the chance to have a big prominent match with a huge star like MJF. And he looked great in the match. They absolutely, like I said, beat the hell out of each other, and it looked awesome, and it was a hard-hitting match that went way longer than I would have ever expected it to. And I thought it delivered, even on all the hype of, commercial free, kickoff Dynamite, white hot starts Dynamite. I really thought it lived up to that well. The other big developments, we had the face-to-face with Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland ahead of their world title match at Forbidden Door, where they really both delivered in this spot. I gotta say, I was excited for the match anyways. I think I've said it probably every week now since this match has been official. But those are my two favorite guys in AEW right now. I think they are two of the most complete, well-rounded, and best wrestlers in the industry, honestly, let alone AEW, the company. And I have full faith that they're going to absolutely tear the house down at Forbidden Door. But the way they sold this match and the way that they escalated it and the way Swerve was so good at pushing buttons and playing that borderline heel tweener role that he has grown so well into, it was just a masterful job to tell the story and to add even more stakes to a match that didn't really need it, but it feels more intense, it feels more personal. They have another week to continue to build towards it, but I overall I think this was it's hard to say a segment, a talking segment was must see, but legitimately this was an unbelievable segment between two people at their absolute peaks right now. It's unbelievable. The other best story in AEW also developed a little bit further with Mina Shirakawa, Mariah May, and Toni Storm having a contract signing for the Toni Storm Mina Shirakawa women's title match that was interrupted by Saraya and Harley Cameron, who have a new third member of their group, Anna Jay, which it's cool to have Anna Jay doing more things that get her on TV more, because I think her growth as a wrestler in that company is pretty impressive to see. I think she's someone that has gotten better and delivered over and over again whenever she gets put in a spot to kind of put up or shut up. So I understand that, but it's a little weird. I don't think the women's world title match needed an extra trio for them to feud with for what's probably going to amount to 1 week. It'll probably be a 6-woman tag match this coming week on Dynamite, and then boom, Forbidden Door, and then whatever happens. So it felt like a little unnecessary. I think they could have just left the story be the story because it's been told so well. But if we get a good, entertaining six-woman tag match, then, no harm, no foul. I just thought it was interesting to be well, here's Saraya. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but it felt like an odd, okay, now we gotta add this in. And lastly, in Ring of Honor news, and disappointing Ring of Honor news, Athena came out and revealed that she had torn multiple ligaments in her ankle that would need surgery, and that she would be out for probably 4 to 6 months. But then she said, I'm also not relinquishing the title. I'm going to be the women's champion of Ring of Honor forever. Which is very fitting and in character, but it feels a little bit like a missed opportunity. I feel like there's some chances here that Ring of Honor could be taking that would be worth the risk. Because Athena has been absolutely carrying Ring of Honor as a whole show, not to mention just the women's division, but the entire Ring of Honor program has been infinitely better since Athena took over as champion and went on this forever champion, minions in training. Like, this role and this run that she has been on has been unbelievable, both in character work and in-ring work. So for her to get hurt is a huge bummer. It's also kind of an indictment on AEW not doing more with her on their programming. Like, their women's division is a very strong division, but they have one of the best women in the world on the Ring of Honor roster holding it down. They should be getting her on TV as much as they possibly can. Like, I don't understand leaving her on Ring of Honor where, you know, you have to have the subscription to Honor Club and seek it out online to watch every week. Like, the matches that she is delivering and the performances and the stories that she's telling with everyone, I think deserve to be seen on the biggest stage possible. And I kind of think that her being out with this injury is a really interesting time, because it opens the door for something like putting that title on Billie Starkz, for example, who has been working with Athena for months now. Putting the title on her and letting her be a double champion and kind of developing her as a character, and then Athena can come back and they can feud into getting Athena onto AEW more. And like, that's just a tentative thought. That's not really, you know, I'm sure there are a lot better eloquent ways to lay it out. It just feels like a missed opportunity if she's just going to hold the belt for 4 months or 5 months and, you know, be on crutches. But something like this, I'm not super concerned about, because I trust Billie Starkz and Athena and everyone involved in that story to know what to do and how to tell it, because it has been so well done so far up to this point. So I think it's an interesting time, and it's an interesting chance to do something like that, but we'll see what ends up actually happening. I have faith that whatever they're going to decide to do, it is going to be just supremely entertaining. A couple more AEW things that I forgot to mention that I have here separately from the show rundown and summary. So, people are obsessed with ratings, with wrestling show ratings, and in particular AEW ratings. And this week's AEW Dynamite had its lowest rating ever, with just about 500,000 viewers, which has been attributed to poor lead-ins, the Kendrick Lamar concert streaming on Prime taking away viewers, all sorts of things. I think it was a good show with good matches and good story development. I understand that ratings are important because AEW is working on this new media deal and trying to figure out what they're going to do. But, and I read something that said it, I don't remember where I read it, but one show at 500,000 viewers is not going to be like Warner Bros. Decides, yeah, you know what, no, we don't want AEW anymore. They got 500,000 viewers for one show. Nah, never mind. I think the build-up to Forbidden Door has been very good. I think next week's show will be bigger. I think coming out of Forbidden Door, going into All In, is going to be, you know, a chance for them to pick up even more viewers and kind of build to those big blockbuster level matches for that card. There was also a weird AEW shirt that went on sale that was based on a quote or a tweet that Tony Khan had, where he said he books the shows for the Sickos, and so now there's a For the Sickos AEW shirt for sale on Pro Wrestling Tees, which it's like in the top 20 of their best sellers this week, and I'm just curious, like, if you ever see that shirt outside of a wrestling show, please let me know. I cannot fathom wearing a shirt that says just For the Sickos in big gold and black letters, like just out and about at the grocery store, or, you know, running errands or getting dinner like with my wife or anything. So please, if you're ordering it, or if you see it out in the wild like that, please let me know, because it is crazy to me. They make shirts for everything. Like, if there is a slogan or anything that they can throw on a shirt, it will be there. I wish it was a picture of the whole tweet. I wish it just said, I booked this stuff for the Sickos, like, in just the tweet, rather than just For the Sickos. I think even that would be a little bit more understandable. But For the Sickos in big banner print is wild. And you know what? It's not even the craziest thing to come out about AEW this week. I don't know if this is a rumor. I don't know how true this is, but there is a report going around that Shane McMahon has expressed some interest in joining AEW. And if you're, keeping kayfabe, you would look at that and think, Tony Khan, whatever you do, don't bring him in. He'll buy your company and invade WWE. But the last time we saw Shane McMahon, he tore both of his quads in the ring with The Miz at an impromptu WrestleMania match in Los Angeles. And now, after everything has come out about his dad and this whole shakeup in the hierarchy of WWE over the last 2 years, for him to express this interest in AEW, I really struggle to comprehend what that would look like. What Shane McMahon, what a McMahon by name would look like in AEW and how that would be utilized on screen. Because AEW does not shy away when there is a chance to take a shot at WWE. Shane McMahon is literally part of the blood, sweat, and tears history of WWE. So if they brought him in to do something, I cannot fathom what it would be. I don't think he'd be wrestling. Like, I can't picture him wrestling week in and week out or at the... Like, they just want to bring Shane McMahon in so he can jump off of the tall fixture at All In, like, off of, like, the canopy or something, through a table. Like, okay, fair play. The man is insane. He is more than sacrificed for the sake of entertainment over the years. So if he has the itch to come in and do a huge, crazy high spot at Wembley Stadium for everyone, cannot say I'm surprised. But if he wants to come in and be like an on-screen authority figure or some type of performer in any capacity past that, I would just be very curious to see what it looks like. And not in a way of like, man, what a good idea, but in the way of like, what could this possibly be? Like the car crash curiosity of like, what could this look like? Like, what is this going to be? Because when I read that, and it was like Jim Ross said that Shane McMahon's really interested in coming to AEW. It's like, what is this Mad Libs ass sentence that I am reading right here? Like, I can't believe the thought of it. So the fact that I can't believe it probably means that all of it is true and will 100% be happening. I'll just wait and believe it when I see it. All right, and in our main topic of the day, the Wyatt Sick6, after months of teases and QR codes and cryptic messages and speculation, has finally debuted. They invaded Monday Night Raw, really across the entire broadcast, with their versions of the intro, the WWE Then Now Forever Always intro graphic that runs, and then at the last segment of the show, made one of the most impressive and striking debuts that I can remember for a faction. Like, the new faction coming in and laying everyone out is not it's not a brand new innovative thing, but the way that this was done and that this was executed was unbelievable. There was essentially just a nobody is safe massacre that happened backstage in Gorilla that everyone saw, where multiple wrestlers, production assistants, and crew members were just laid out. There was blood everywhere. It looked like a Halloween Horror Nights haunted house at a couple points in the best possible way. And around every corner, the camera is following you through guiding you through all of this. And through every corner, there's another scene of people just laid out and bloodied, with another family member lurking in the background or sitting up on a shelf or like just right there in the scene. And it was just an incredibly laid out segment that ended with this shot of Chad Gable bloodied and laid up against he looked dead, laid up against the equipment in the back, looked absolutely just blood on his forehead and laid out completely, looked completely dead. And right next to him, Uncle Howdy strikes this pose, comes out, and joins the rest of the Wyatt Sick6, who are 5 right now. We will get to that. It is Uncle Howdy, aka Bo Dallas. It is Dexter Loomis, Joe Gacy. It is Eric Rowan, who returns to the company, and Nikki Cross are the members of the Wyatt Sick6. Tons of people guessing and speculating on who the actual 6th person might be, or if it's going to be a metaphorical thing where Bray is the 6th person, because this is all in tribute of Bray Wyatt. I don't know, who knows how closely he was working with Bo Dallas to kind of lay out the story and map out what he had in mind. I would assume that all of this is going to be pretty close to what he would have had planned, or what he would have wanted, at least. I can't imagine that they would have taken this time and this care with the storyline for any other reason other than in tribute to him and in respect for his wishes and his vision. And with that in mind, I'm kind of just ready to shut my brain off and enjoy wherever this all is going to go. I think that this was the perfect introduction. I think the way that this was shot and the way that it was laid out was intense and brutal without feeling overtly like gimmicky. Like, it didn't feel like a supernatural, like, these mystical entities are destroying. Like, no, it felt like, a group of psychos is destroying backstage and laying out anyone they see. And there's that element of danger that this has that I think is really going to go a long way. Because, like, it ended, and I immediately wanted, like, okay, what's going to happen on SmackDown? Is there going to be another development there? Like, no. Okay, now I have to wait till Raw. Like, is Raw going to start with this? Like, I don't know. Am I going to have to watch 3 hours of Raw to get to whatever's coming next? Like, I don't know what the next development is, but I know that, like, I can't miss seeing it. Like, I'm super intrigued by what they have, because not only does it feel super different from everything else that WWE is doing right now, but it has that same high production value and that same level of care. And it's using these performers that we have not seen in months and months, and in some cases, almost years out of WWE. It is using them in meaningful ways that feels fresh and unique and like something that we have not seen before, even in the scope of other Bray Wyatt storylines and his creations. So I'm really interested to see how this develops and to see what storylines look like involving the Wyatt Six. And also, all of that said, like I said, it was a very effective, very well shot, very creepy, very well realized and actualized segment. It was one of the best intro and debut segments I think I can remember, and it was haunting in all of the best ways. But it does lose its impact when hours later, the next day, we get the incredible shot of all of the Wyatt Six members with a fan late night at Whataburger, all smiling and posing with them and taking this picture. It is so funny to me to think about them doing that intense, grisly, brutal segment. The show ends, and they're all like, oh man, you want Whataburger? Should we go to what? Yeah, let's go to Whataburger. Like, oh, that's open right now, right? And there's just something so funny about that to me, in like the best way, and like the best like camaraderie way of like, okay, this group is in it together, and I'm very, very excited to see this, for all of them to be given this opportunity and to see where it's all going to lead, because I was absolutely blown away with the debut and the presentation, which is something that I kind of did not think was going to happen. I was a little skeptical on how it was all going to go, because I thought it was going to just be too hyped. I thought it was going to be something where, okay, we've done all the QR codes, we've had all the interruptions and subliminal messages in the background, we've had all of this, and here we go, let's finally get to the story. And instead, for me, it was the complete opposite. But we did have a couple interesting reactions as well. Jey Uso, in a digital exclusive segment after Raw, talked about it with Kathy Kelly, where he basically was like, I know the fans have been doing the Fireflies for me and my entrance. They can have that. I don't want any problems. Did you see everything? Yeah, you saw it too. They can have it. I don't have any problems with them. I loved Bray Wyatt, and like, it was just so funny. Such a realistic, funny, like, hey, it is, they have no problem with me. I have no problem with them as far as I'm concerned. But even better than Jey Uso was Sami Zayn, who did an interview with Sportsnet after Raw, I think the next day or 2 days later, where they asked him about, hey, what did you think about that Wyatt Six debut? And he tweeted out a segment of the clip, or a segment of the interview, and he said, yeah, so I actually didn't even know that happened, because I left the arena right after my thing was done. So maybe 5 or 10 minutes before all that stuff happened on Monday Night Raw, I had no idea, and I left the arena, and I didn't look at results of what happened or anything. Then I get to my hotel, and I tweet out the pre-sale code for my comedy show, and all of the replies from the fans are like, your coworkers have been killed. What are you tweeting about a comedy show? And it's just so funny. I'm really curious to see what the Wyatt Six is going to look like week to week. Like, I think there's some speculation they might get involved with Jey Uso as one of their first big feuds. There was a shot someone found where there were props and things kind of like linking to the different Wyatt characters above Chad Gable in a segment that he was in backstage. So people were like, oh, that's kind of like identifying him as a target. And apparently Gable and all of the people who were shown attacked and laid out backstage during the debut were all deliberately chosen for very specific reasons. Gable's the only one they've mentioned by name, so I don't know if that's the only one that's going to be involved in a story for now, but it has all been clearly meticulously planned, and I think something like that is going to be darker, with hopefully without the heavy leaning on the mysticism side of things. I really think it's going to be something that can really be cool, and that can really put WWE in a nice spot to do something new and unique and just overall exciting. I think that's everything that I had that I want to talk about. If there was anything that I missed, I said earlier, please send in an email, leave a comment on the YouTube, anything like that. Let me know your thoughts too. If you really liked the Wyatt Six debut, if it left you wanting a little bit more after all the teases, and anything else this week that stood out to you. I close the show every week running through some of the matches that if you missed, go back and check out. I did already mention the Will Ospreay Swerve Strickland promo battle. I think that that's worth watching as well. But for now, I will keep it to the matches. So if you did not see any of these, please check them out when you get the chance before we start what is sure to be another incredibly packed week of wrestling as we push towards SummerSlam and we hit the week of AEW Forbidden Door. So thank you very much for watching, listening, joining along. I appreciate it. I hope everyone has a good weekend and a great week. Talk to you soon. We have Io Sky versus Zelina Vega versus Kiana James from Monday Night Raw in a triple threat match for Money in the Bank qualifying. We have MJF versus Roosh on AEW Dynamite. We have Claudio Castagnoli versus Pac on AEW Dynamite. We have Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa on WWE SmackDown, including the Jacob Fatu debut and beatdown. And then lastly, it has not happened yet because I'm recording this on Friday night, but Will Ospreay versus Brian Cage for the AEW International Championship will happen on Collision Saturday night, and that is probably going to be a banger. So make sure you check that out as well. Thanks for watching.